Welcome back for another video. We're going to have a look at your biggest questions and dilemmas ahead of Game Week 7 with some final thoughts on the game week and my team at the end. We'll also cover all the key news from today's press conferences. First question from Stuff, who asks about Luis Diaz replacements if he hypothetically doesn't start. In their case, looking for replacements 8 mil and under. Now given they've got the early kickoff, there is a reasonable chance of some early team news on the deadline stream, so make sure you subscribed and tuned in. I've shortlisted 3 picks under 8 million. Maddison and Johnson are both on 29 points so far. Maddison has created 3 big chances, 4.82 XGI, which is really impressive underlying numbers. I like both of these picks. Spurs have started the season really well, and as far as expected goals, they're top in the league with 13.69 XG. So buying an attacker makes sense, combined with the good upcoming fixtures. Johnson's scored in his last 5 games in a row in all competitions as well. I like Maddison more. His underlying numbers are superior, his minutes have been a bit better as well, and he's got more routes to points with corners and free kicks, though Johnson's worth consideration if that extra money goes towards something in your team. Now West Ham haven't started the season well, but Bowen I really rate as a pick still, and it's the perfect entry point this week buying him home to Ipswich. It's the perfect fixture for Lopetegui to get a convincing performance, and he is their main man. 1 goal, 2 assists so far, and he generally plays 90 minutes. I like Gordon as well, despite his lack of output so far, just the 2 goals. Now Isak's out for Game Week 7, so he'll be on penalties, and he's up against his old team Everton, plus Bruyne's picked up an injury and he's going to miss the game for Everton. I've not mentioned Bumo at all, he's the really obvious pick if you haven't got him, don't overthink it if you've not got Bumo. James asked whether Foden will start and is he a good option as a differential. Now he's someone I'm genuinely seriously considering this week. He got his first start of the season in the Champions League midweek and he had a man of the match performance. He scored and he was taken off early, which I think is with a view to starting him against Fulham. There's a good chance of some team news ahead of the deadline, so if you've got Diaz, or if you're considering Foden, wait before making those moves, as we could learn whether either of them start or either a bench, plus some other players. Now Foden's obviously not completely nailed, we know what Pep's like, but the fixtures are just unbelievable. It's Fulham, Wolves, Southampton, Bournemouth and Brighton. I think in FPL you have to sometimes take a chance early rather than reacting to past performances and underlying data. He's only 5.1% owned, 230 points last season, which was only beaten by Palmer. I think Pep will be a bit conscious of an over-reliance on Haaland, and KDB's still out, so I think he's got a good chance of starting this one. Let's talk about Palmer then. The next question is it worth selling Salah for Palmer, and is it worth a -4 to sell Pedro for Solanke? So let's break down Salah to Palmer first. The fixtures on paper are very comparable, pretty good this week, and then it's a mixed bag after that, including facing one another. I'd expect them to score very similarly over this run, so I think Salah to Palmer is a reasonable move, given it does free up 2 million, which will go a long way in your team. For example, that's a 4 mil defender up to Vardy, or João Pedro to Solanke. I would take the -4 as well to sell João Pedro for Solanke. We discussed Tottenham's upcoming games, and João Pedro is still flagged, he's expected to miss Game Week 7. I'd fully expect a hit like that to be repaid. I personally don't like Saka to Palmer though. That one feels more like points chasing to me. Saka's home to Southampton, then he's got Bournemouth away. I don't have a straightforward route to Palmer this week in my team, which I think is a position many are in. So I'm looking at Game Week 12 instead to buy him for that Leicester fixture onwards. Senor Lump asks, can you put this question in the video for no reason whatsoever? Not this week, sorry, maybe next time. Marty asks whether to sell Salah on a wildcard. I'll pull up the wildcard team from the video early this week to help answer this one. Now make no mistake, Salah's the FPL GOAT and he's bound to keep ticking along, but I didn't have him on the wildcard draft. It is possible to squeeze Palmer, Saka and Haaland in a wildcard, but that extra 2 million for Salah kills the team balance too much for me. The wildcard was Raya in goal, it was Collins, Vardy and Gabriel in defence, McNeil, Saka, Bumo, Palmer, Rodgers in midfield, Haaland and Solanke up top, Fabianski, Mykolenko, Guehi and Stewart on the bench. So it's a process of elimination really. Haaland and Saka are non-negotiables in the wildcard for me. I do think you can make the case for going without Palmer and get him in Game Week 12 even if you're in a wildcard this week. You can get Trent over Collins, you can get a forward like Wood over Stewart, etc. However, I'll be transparent, spreading that money around without Palmer backfired for me last game week. Let's see what happens this week. Things move really fast in FPL, all it takes is a Palmer blank, and those that did spread the money around in a very good position. After all, 8 of his 10 returns came against Wolves and Brighton. He's blanked twice, and he got 1 assist in 1 game. It's great how they've priced everyone though, so that we're forced to make these difficult decisions. Last season when he was 5 mil, you just left him in your team until Game Week 38. Lucy asks whether to start a Forest defender against Chelsea away, or an Everton defender against Newcastle home, with Bruyne out. Now Bruyne is going to be a huge loss this week. Everton's start to the season tells us that. It's a close call because Forest defence has been really good, while Everton's hasn't. I'd just about lean towards the Forest defender, but I'd expect both teams to concede to be honest. There's also a reported Mykolenko injury that we'll discuss in a minute, which nudges me towards Forest. The clean sheet odds marginally favour Everton, but those odds are probably from before the injury news. Let's discuss some key news from today's press conferences then. March is back in training for Brighton and he might be an option for Gameweek 7. Not an option in FPL, but I'm still waiting on those goal points. More notably, Van Hecke and João Pedro both remain out for Brighton. Van Hecke's expected to be out for a few weeks, he's a big miss. Advantage to Spurs here, which does lend some weight to buying Porro, Maddison, Johnson or Solanke this week. Isak and Wilson are targeting a Gameweek 8 return and will likely miss out this weekend. Shearer and Pope should be okay, who are both currently yellow flagged. Howe hopes that Tripp is going to be okay as well, but I mean Howe's generally very elusive with his presser comments, and he occasionally lies as well, so it wouldn't be surprising if Isak plays, but if you've got him, sell him for Solanke. Postecoglou says Son's pushing hard to be fit for Gameweek 7, but he's unlikely to play, so if you've got him, look to get rid this week. He also added that he expects Udogie to be okay, and they've still got a couple of training sessions before the game to assess him. Pretty much everyone's available for Liverpool. Elliott's still sidelined with a fractured foot. Chiesa missed the Champions League midweek and he remains a doubt. As far as Champions League minutes, Diaz, Darwin and Salah was the front three, and Darwin didn't have a great game and he came off at 61 minutes for Jota. Diaz played 72 minutes and he came off for Gakpo. Salah played 90, Trent played 85. My best guess would be a front three of Diaz, Jota and Salah for Gameweek 7. Perhaps a chance of a Gakpo start, but Diaz has been the clear favourite in left wing so far. I watched the Man City press conference and there wasn't much news either. No news is good news, I suppose. KDB and Ake are still sidelined with their injury, and obviously Bob and Rodri long term. The big question this week is, does Lewis start? And for those considering him, does Foden start? Vardiol started in the Champions League and he came off early for Walker, while Lewis started and he played the full 90, but he was absolute class. Hopefully we get something concrete ahead of the deadline. Another one to be aware of, there's rumours of a Mykolenko injury which could rule him out for 2 to 3 weeks. And I think this one might have legs based on what I've heard. Plan accordingly if he was someone you're going to count on this week. Hopefully he's back for Gameweek 8, but if it does end up being 3 weeks, it could take him to Gameweek 9 even. This puts my team in a bit of a tricky spot, because if Lewis doesn't start, he was going to be my backup. So I could be looking at playing Greaves away at West Ham, or I fix my defence up as part of my transfer plans. Arteta said he had to modify training for a lot of players after the midweek win over PSG in the Champions League, and a decision is going to be made this afternoon on Timber and White and their involvement in Gameweek 7. They're close to being available, as is Tomiyasu. Odegaard's yet to have an exact return date confirmed. Finishing up with some final thoughts on my team, I've got Raya in goal this week, Trent, Lewis and Gabriel in defence, Saka, Luis Diaz, Bumo, Semenyo and Rodgers in midfield, Solanke and Haaland up top. Now on the off chance that both Luis Diaz doesn't start and Foden does, then I'll be going Trent to Pedro Porro and Diaz to Foden. It's a move I'm considering regardless of a Diaz start, because Foden feels like a huge upside opportunity this week, but selling Trent and Diaz could backfire, let's be honest. City have scored an average of 3.25 goals against Fulham in their last 4 league meetings. Tottenham's defence as well does seem to have improved. Last season they finished 14th for expected goals conceded, just ahead of Wolves, just behind Fulham. After 6 game weeks they're currently 4th best. They've only conceded 51 shots in total, which ranks 2nd best after Man City. Now if Diaz and Foden both don't start, then I'm looking to buy Maddison as it stands this week. My only route to Palmer is Trent down to a 4.3mm defender or cheaper, and Diaz to Palmer. It just doesn't feel worth it really, as I've also got Lewis in my team who's not nailed, so there could be weeks where I'm playing Gabriel, Mykolenko and a 4mm defender. I can actually afford to go Wood to Stewart, Diaz to Palmer and then Trent to Vardiol for a -4, but it is a hit and I'm losing Wood, who I picked specifically to use when Semenyo hits 3 tougher games from Gameweek 8, so that feels like a poor choice as well for the team balance. I read all your comments though, and I know many of you think it's insanity not to buy Palmer this week, but I just haven't found a transfer combination that I'm comfortable with. Whatever your views are on the leaks, you can't ignore them if they affect your team. And if it might affect you, then I'd spend some time in advance just working out your different paths based on news that could drop. For example, if Lewis starts or if he's benched, what do you do? Or if Diaz starts or if he's benched, Foden, etc. It saves putting yourself through some last minute panic if something comes out right before the deadline. That would be my main tip this week. We'll be live here for a deadline stream Saturday morning, so make sure you're subscribed. Thanks for watching and see you then.